Paolo, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Yeah, as I say, it was a real pleasure to to have you on the podcast. It's yeah, you've once again it's similar to Brian Cannon for me in that you were just one of those people when I just went full headfirst into Oasis and Britpop and
Yeah.
and delving back into the history of music. You were one of those guys that sort of helped me on that journey, definitely. So I'll always be
Oh, that's very
grateful.
kind of you. Thank you.
Well, that's
Thank you. That's cheered my Saturday up.
well, there you go. Well, that's yeah. I mean that was that was an important thing, and we I mean we were in a band.
It was an important thing, and I was very, I was very fortunate to be there at that time. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I met the band in '94, so it was a great time. They would, they just started the ascent into, superstardom, and it was just brilliant to be there and watch it all unfold. It was a unique experience, and I'm very, very grateful for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, you were there, and it's, and I think that, especially Getting High was, I mean, we all had that, that was like a sort of the Bible really for us.
Oh, thank you.
And even in
yeah, I put a lot into that, man. Jesus.
Yeah. Was that hard work?
God. Yeah, it was a lot of hard work because what it was first of all, I knew it was sort of like, how do I put it? It wasn't an open goal, but it was like, I've got to put this into the back of the net because if I miss this, if I don't do this correctly, it would be such a missed opportunity. Because I was there, I think I called one of the chapters In the Eye of the Storm,
yeah,
which was a George Harrison quote, I think. And so I was there in that storm, so I would never, ever, ever again be in that storm. I would never, ever witness anything, so I had to get it absolutely right. So there was a bit of pressure. And also I was doing things like, like the conversations that go on. That was me running back to my hotel room at like 4 a.m. and scribbling down everything I could remember. And then, of course, waking up next day and looking at my notes and not being able to read one word of them because my handwriting's so bad and probably had a couple of shandies. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so there was a lot of that going on. And it took me a year. I remember I started in January of, that come out, 97? Yeah, 97, wasn't it? Or 98. I don't know, I can't remember. I think it was 97 and I started in 96. Yeah, I started it in 96.
Right.
And I wrote from January to October, and I was working like, 10, 15-hour days,
Well, I suppose when you've got a band...
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, when you've got a band that are just in that peak of the ascendancy, I suppose with the publisher just like, get it out now,
Yeah. Well, they were, but the thing was, Oasis were just getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like, there was no sense of them at that time peaking at all, I mean, it was Nebworth that year, so,
yeah.
And it was only, I think, probably 98, 99 that it started to wind down a bit, but I think, so there was a lot of pressure on to get that correct, and from the reviews and from what people have written to me, it seems like I managed to put the ball in the net. So that's great.
No, absolutely, and because it was a an eye of the storm. It's someone who's physically there, experiencing it with them, but putting it into words better than they probably could because they're not kind of educated sort of book writing type guys. Although
no, they're musicians. They play music to a very large amount of people, which in itself is a huge skill. So that's what they did. And I mean, what I did was I DJ'd on tour with him. You see,
okay,
which was a really smart move, because what it did was, if I'd gone on tour with them as the writer, if I walked into the dressing room, they would shut up.
Yeah.
Go, all right, the writer's in. But they didn't, because they thought I was Paolo the DJ. They kind of forgot I was writing a book because they couldn't see me actually doing it. Because like I say, at the end of each night, I'd go back to the hotel room and write down everything I remembered. So there wasn't a sense of, oh, be quiet, he's here. It was like, oh, there's Paolo, he's the DJ.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. That makes. I know you're a big football guy, and that makes me think of, you know that footballers are just the biggest kind of jokers and piss takers and like hooligans, and yet as soon as a camera goes on them, they just become like frightened schoolboys, right? And they just sat there like, well, and they just come out with the cliches.
They're kind of drilled in it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, watch a match of the day and count it, and how many times somebody comes on who's scored some wonder goal, and they go, "What an amazing goal, Harry Kane," and Harry will go, "Yes, thank you very much, but the most important thing was the team got 3 points today."
I know.
You watch how many times they're drilled in it,
Yeah. And yet,
with musicians, they're obviously far looser and. But so any kind of, there was a lot of rows going on, a lot of fighting. So, if I was there for that, it wasn't calmed down. Oh, don't do this in front of him. Everything just evolved organically.
And was there much of a, oh no, you can't put that out, or you can't say they were taking drugs, or you can't say it was just like no, fine.
No. Funny enough, with Forever the People, there was a hint of let's the drug thing is boring now, blah blah blah. But by then it was a different kettle of fish. Because you see that tour, that Be Here Now tour, was a slog. It wasn't fun anymore. And I think I say in Forever the People, suddenly all they kept talking about was 10 years previous, being stuck in some van going up to Leeds to play One Man and His Dog, and getting caught by the police, or shenanigans, or just that. Yeah. Because suddenly it felt like it was just a job. It was just a slog, and it was funny because I've been on tours before. I think everything leading up to Nebworth was just magical, and I think after Nebworth it started to become something completely different to what it had been. Yeah. The fun kind of went from it, really.
Yeah. Well, I've got Matt Whitecross, director of Supersonic, coming on in a bit, and
lovely guy.
Oh, good. And he, and like I've heard him in other interviews sort of saying, when people have said, well, why did you stop at Nebworth? And it's with every band, the journey to get there is always the most interesting bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
the journey upwards is the most exciting bit. Once you get to the top, once you've achieved, I said to you, he didn't use it, Matt, but I said this line to him. The trouble with Oasis was they had all these dreams about being huge rock and roll stars, and they wrote records called Rock and Roll Star. Yeah. About those desires, and that they wanted to live in big houses and sleep with amazing looking women and take the best drugs and they drink the finest champagne. They wanted that classic rock star thing, and they got it. And once they got it, they didn't know what to do because they'd achieved their dreams. And what I said to Matt was, what you have to do somehow is go back to bed and dream up another load of dreams, and then follow them. But by then it was just too late, and it was a crazy, what 500,000 people were out, over 500,000 people were out, Be Here Now on the first day of release. Yeah, it's just craziness,
madness.
Yeah, it was absolute madness, and I think it kind of, and then like they say in that documentary, suddenly they were surrounded by a lot of men with man bags. You've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and I remember thinking after Nebworth, you should Sunday night at Nebworth should have just said, you know what, that's it, see you later. Yeah. And then it would have gone down in history. It would have just been amazing. But instead, it kind of slowly disintegrated, didn't it?
Well, that's the same as the Jam, isn't it? Right. So the Jam did exactly that, and Weller did something completely different, and then it was just done. Never gone back to it. And I think that's one of the great things about Weller. That whole just never go back, keep moving forwards. That now the Jam have been cemented as this burn so bright, exactly the same as the Smiths. Like burn bright, done. That's what you want. Yeah. But no, nice one. Well, just taking it back a bit, Paolo. I mean, it's sort of funny. We often do these sort of go back and your childhood and things like that. But I mean, in your case, anyone who knows your stuff and has bought your books and stuff kind of knows it, because it's you've written a couple of excellent books sort of about your growing up. But yeah, you didn't have the most sort of conventional nuclear family upbringing. Let's just put it that way.
Oh Oh, I wouldn't know. I would disagree with that. And everybody end up in a nursery at the end of the age of 2 days old. No, right. Joking, aren't you? No, it was a bit of a mad one, but my mother was in a hospital and that she'd had a bit of a nervous breakdown, and basically, if it happened today, she would have been out in 3 months. But and those unenlightened days, pardon me, she put in a hospital and she lived there for 40 years, and anyway, she had an affair with someone in the hospital, and that was me, so I was taken away from her. Pardon me, after 2 days, and I was placed in care. When I was 4, I was fostered actually, because they never got to adopt me. The one good thing is my mother never signed the adoption forms. Because the family adopted me was run by this woman who made Maggie Thatcher look like Florence Nightingale. I mean, this woman was crazy. You know, she got me in cupboards and blah, blah, blah. So it was a really, really unhappy childhood. But there was one really good bit. One Sunday, I presume it must have been about October 63. Yeah. I'm just basing that on the release of the record She Loves You by the Beatles, because I heard it on the radio, and it was like, I can still remember now, it just feels magical. It completely and utterly captivated me. I was just, all day long, I just walked around going, She Loves You, yeah. I was just, and that started my love affair with music, and I was also a good reader, and so books and music were kind of my way out of what was, this very harrowing situation I was in. Books and music were and football as well, actually. And I look back on it now, when I wrote The Looked After Kids, which was my first book about growing up in care, I realised the reason I took to them so much was because they placed me in the present. When you're playing football, when you're listening to music, when you're reading a book, you're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're actually in the present. And if it's a great book and if it's a great record, when it's an absorbing game of football, then you're absolutely taken, you're captivated by it.
Absolutely.
So it's a release. It's a relief from what was going on, and that's why music and books are so important to me. When I was 10, she threw me out of the house and put me back into care, and I spent my formative years, 10 till 18, at a children's home in Woking called Burbank, which an experience I look back on very fondly. I think it gave me, I wrote about this in my second book, But We All Shine On, which was, it gave me, I realised that it gave me a lot of really good qualities. Loyalty. When people arrived at the home, there was this kind of recognition, that something bad had happened to this person, and so I became very non-judgmental. Anybody who walked through that door, it didn't matter whether they were boy, girl, coloured, whatever. It didn't matter, do you know what I mean? Of any colour, of any colour. It didn't matter because they were in the same boat as us. So, it gave me that. And also, I was very lucky because when I was 14, I walked into school and a friend of mine was reading The Enemy, and I said to him, "What's this?" And he went, "It's The Enemy." And I said, "What on earth is that?" And he went, "Well, it's New Musical Express. It's a paper about music." I just couldn't believe there was a paper about music. I was just fascinated by it. And the light bulb came on. I thought, that's what I want to do. That's it. That's what I want to do. So I was very lucky, so I had that to aim for. But because I was in a children's home, I didn't really have anybody telling me I couldn't do it. Do you know what I mean? I think my parents going, "No, you're going to go to university, or you're going to
get a proper job." Yeah.
Yeah, do you know, exactly, get a proper job. I've been looking for one of those the last 40 years. Yeah. So the children's home actually gave me a lot of good things, So, but I left there when I was 19, 20. No, I left when I was 18. I lived with a good friend of mine, Pete Garland, so I was at 19, 20, and then I moved up to London because, in Woking, they sort of have bylaws against you becoming a writer. They don't like it, so I knew I had to get to London to achieve my dream. So I came up to London, and I joined the college, and I joined the college's paper, and I wrote for that paper, And one day I went to Camden Tube Station by the NME, and the NME wasn't there. They'd sold out, and I spent 10 minutes saying, going, come on, you must have a copy somewhere. And in the end, he sold me Melody Maker. And it was sort of, oh, God, because Melody Maker then was just, you know, compared to the NME, this was like, this was like hanging out with your great granny. You know, the NME was like hanging out with your mates and having the fag on the bike shed. This was like going around to your granny's for tea or something. It's just horrible. And there was an ad said young writers wanted, so I sent them in what I'd written for the student paper. And on Friday, I was in the office of Richard Williams, the editor, and he started giving me, you know, live reviews to do and stuff like that, and it grew from there, really.
That is phenomenal, isn't it? Like, so that was just it. There was no sort of you hawking your stuff around town for years. It was just boom, first entry and straight in. I know, but you know what I think? What it is, James, is I think it's about, if you're obsessed with something big enough, you will get it. I think, you know, if we're talking about Oasis, Noel was obsessed. They were all obsessed with making it huge, not just making it, but making it huge. Yeah. And if you put enough into it, if you really, you know. I've got a book coming out this year about, it's an open letter to my son Rafi, and I was talking about this in there. If you really, really want it, you know, and you're obsessed with it, you know, like I was obsessed with the NMEs. Therefore, because I was obsessed with the NME, I was at Camden Tube when they didn't have one, for me to buy Melody Maker. Do you know what I mean? Mm. All those kind of things, which, you know, are luck, are also about obsession, about what, you know, what it will drive you to do. You know, I would have done anything. You know, so I got to join the NME in 1983. So, you know, you can. I think it's about mind power, as James Brown would say. Yeah. I really do think that. Yeah. Well, and I just think I was very lucky to have that. I'm a huge fan of Robert De Niro, and I was watching an interview with him, and the guy said to him, De Niro went, I'm very lucky. And the guy went, well, I bet you're lucky. You know, you put all this research into your roles and you really worked. And he said, yeah, but I had that instinct to do that, you know. And that's what I had. I had that instinct. I want to become an NME writer, you know. And that's how I got to do it, you know. And I just think it's that mind power thing. I really do. Yeah. And I think it's coming from... you know, people that come from working class backgrounds as well, because, like, you know, so many of the great footballers, great musicians, great writers have had to do it, you know, and I think that sort of, you know, I'm sort of from rural Oxfordshire, and it just sort of, you know, there's no one of any note has ever come from my town, which is Didcot. When you look on Wikipedia, famous people from Didcot, it's like, you know, tumbleweed, and it's because, you know, it's a pretty nice place and there's work. You get into Oxford, you can get into London, you get into Reading, and like, you know, so there isn't that same desire and thrust that, you know, like the Oasis guys had, that look, if we're not going to make it as a footballer or a musician, you're basically going to be working in a factory or on the dole or dealing drugs, and that's it, you know. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing was, for me, was I kind of thought to myself, I mean, there was a lot of insecurity that went with it, because I had no idea if I was any good as a writer. I really didn't, and it took me years and years. Even people going to me, that was a brilliant article. Because because of my upbringing, I kind of had quite a lot of low self-esteem. I didn't kind of believe it. But the thing I thought myself was, I've got to try this. You know, the worst thing in the world, I think, would be to be lying on your deathbed and go, I wish I'd tried to become a writer. I wish I'd tried to join a band. Do you know what I mean? At least if I failed, I could, you know, go back to Woking with my tail between my legs and go and work in the library or something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough. And so, but knowing I tried it, and, you know, I didn't cut it, but at least I tried, gave it a shot. At least you gave it a go. Yeah, exactly. No, fair enough. And so was it? So you mentioned it was like the Beatles, and then what about sort of going on from the Beatles once you're into your kind of teenage years? What bands was it, or artists that really turned you on around them? In the 70s it was Graham Parker and the Rumour. In the 80s it was in the 70s as well, the Faces. The Faces were huge for me as well. The Faces and Graham Parker and the Rumour. And then in the 80s, Dexys Midnight Runners, and in the 90s, Shack. Oh wow, I haven't thought about Shack for. They were an incredible band. Oh, love them. Absolutely love them. Yeah. But Noel put a couple of albums out, didn't he, on his label? Yeah. No, that's great. No, I love Shack. In fact, I took Noel to see Shack down at the Astoria. Oh, cool.
It's funny because that's the second time I saw Oasis. The first time I saw them was at the Kentish Town Forum.
Well, I was going to say, what was the first sort of your first introduction to Oasis then, either hearing the music or live or meeting them?
It was sort of one of those things where it was word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I'll tell you what it was. It was Jeff Barrett. I used to hang out with Jeff Barrett, who runs Heavenly Records a lot. And I was round his house, and he went, have a listen to this, and it was Live Forever. He played me Live Forever. I was just thought, that is just one of the most amazing records I've ever heard. Really did. And then I think then I saw him on, what was that program they were on?
The Word.
Yeah, that was it. I saw him on that and thought, yeah, this is good. But there was this real buzz around London about him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like that word of mouth. You got to go and see this band. So we got tickets to the Forum, and it was just great. I mean, the thing that struck me was they were making this huge sound, but nobody was moving on stage. They just stood there staring at the audience, you know. And yet you had this huge sound coming from it. It was quite unique. And then, of course, Liam and Hands Behind the Back and the vocal style, and, you know, it was just, wow, you know. You knew it was something. You know something.
Yeah. And what about meeting them for the first time, Paolo, and sort of getting in, as I say, as a DJ initially?
No one knew me because I'd written a book about the Jam, because obviously he was a huge fan of them. And so he came up and said hello, and that was it. But then he called me up a couple of weeks later and invited me round to his flat in Fulham. He was staying at Johnny Marr's flat in Fulham.
Oh, yeah.
And we went round there, and that's when I first got to know him. They were watching this, they'd done this interview with Gary Crowley.
Yeah.
And they were just watching, no one was watching it endlessly. Because they'd given him all the outtakes, you know, the full interview.
I mean, could you believe, though, that in a way that it was so easy? I mean, I'm sure there's probably a lot of, you know, people who are watching this who are in bands who have been, you know, banging out the tapes to record companies for years.
It's not easy. And like people go, oh yeah, well, someone asked me, how did we go about and get this deal? And like, we didn't go out anyway. It was just one of them things, and we're lucky enough that it happened. Hurrah! You know,
anyway, can I say something now?
You know,
my name's
just
Noel.
One of them things.
I write all the songs.
You know, you walk down the road, you trip over, you break your leg, and you're gutted. You know, it's one of them things. Like we do a gig for 4, you know, do 4 songs, and he comes up and takes us away. I'm after it. Oh, I want to be a star.
So he was kind of obsessing over that, and then we got talking about Beatles and football and whatever. And then Noel moved to Camden, and I was in a place called Crouch End at the time, which is quite near. So I started going over to his little flat in Camden, yeah. And we'd watch the football, or, you know, talk, or, you know, all the rest of it.
Nice one. What about the other guys, or was it mainly Noel that was you were good mates with?
It was Noel that I first got to know, and I was probably closest to. And then, obviously, going on the road, I met the rest of them. Liam was very standoffish with me. I think he saw me as some, you know, he was very suspicious of anybody really in those days. So, which is fair enough. I understood that totally. So, Quigley was lovely. And Bonehead and Alan White had just come in. They're lovely guys, you know, really, really funny, and you know, it was a lot of fun then. The thing was, they had this kind of, you know, everything was new. You know, we're going on tour in Japan, yeah, we're going to Japan, it's amazing, you know. 4 years later, going to Japan, I'll stay in that shit hotel again all week, you know. But at that time, everything was brand new, and it was all groovy, and, you know, they were, you know, it was just incident after incident, adventure after adventure, you know.
Yeah.
Noel would come back and say, you know, got stopped at the border. You know, we had to hide everything in there. I mean, it was just mental. It was just all this stuff, you know. And it was just funny. It was just really, really funny. And he was just, his writing, he was on one of those streets, you know, that, like, everything he was writing was, you know, had value to it. Not, you know, I would say, some songs weren't as effective as others, or as big or as epic, but even the little ones had something about them. He was just on this incredible roll, really. I think he'd been waiting for so long that when he saw his chance, he just took it, with both hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
They weren't going to mess this one up, But they had no idea how big they were going to get. I remember Noel saying to me when Morning Glory was still selling after a year, he said, I thought we were going to replace the Stone Roses. That's what the idea was. They were going to replace the Stone Roses and become the Stone Roses, and have their audience. It is a sizable audience, but it wasn't the worldwide phenomenon that they became.
No, good. And then I have to ask you, Paolo, because the crazy thing about this, and one of the big spurs for me starting this podcast, was that there's a lot of good stuff written around their first few years, and like we were saying, that is the key point. But there's been nothing that's been a career retrospective of Oasis. There isn't a book, unless there's a little self-published one. There isn't one, and I was sort of in a recent episode. I was talking to this American author Ken Womack, who writes on the Beatles primarily. And I was sort of saying this to him, and he said, "Well, go and write one." And I went, "Well, I'm not going to write one." But Paolo, I ran it as a poll on my Twitter, and I said, "Right, we need a career retrospective book. Who should write it? Me, Paolo, I think Paul, Martha, and someone that I can't remember who the other was. And you came out like 80%. So the public is speaking. Go and write that book, mate."
Well, you see, that's very kind, and thank you to everyone. But the most important thing was that we got 3 points today. The thing is that it's not as interesting. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it just became a machine, Oasis.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, once Quigsy and Bone had left, it was like when Ronnie Lane. I don't know if your listeners know who the Faces were.
Yeah, I'd imagine most do.
When Ronnie Lane left the Faces, that was the end of it. They went on for another 2 years, but that was the end of the Faces, really. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when Quigsy and Bone had left, that was the end of Oasis.
Yeah.
The rest was just, I mean, what I would like is for someone to put up a list of the great tracks from that period.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't have to wait for all those albums.
Right. Well, I think, people
tell me that. People say that there's really good stuff on.
Well, I've done yesterday I did a Spotify playlist of, I tried to make there was another poll where we said, right, what's the best Oasis album post Be Here Now? Because all of those albums have got good tracks on them, but as I say, there's some pretty sloggy ones as well that you just wouldn't have even made it anywhere near a B-side on the early years. So there's probably 20, 25 that are decent, and you could really make probably one good album that was up there with the others. So I'll tell you what, mate.
Send me a list of what that album would be.
I will. I'll ping that over, and then maybe I'll put it out when I come off the phone. I'll put it out on Twitter, and we'll say, right, let's build an album for Paolo. Our hive mind will give you the best Oasis 2000s album, mate. There you go.
Because it's funny, last night I went to this Sgt. Pepper thing, because it was 50th anniversary of Sgt. Pepper yesterday.
Yeah.
It was a launch party at Bayern.
Yeah, I didn't get my invite. I don't know where that I must have gone missing in the post.
We were waiting for you, mate. We were waiting for you. When you didn't show up, we just carried on. And I was thinking this morning that you see, Sgt. Pepper I have problems with.
Right.
And I was thinking, you know what? You could actually, the best way to do it sometimes is with bands is years. Instead of albums. For example, with 1967, Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane came out.
Yeah.
Which any band would put on their next album, wouldn't they? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if you took off with a little help from your friends and Within, Without You, the thing that goes on forever on side 2, side 2 or whatever, and then what an album then? Now you're starting. Do you know what I mean? And if you did it by years, it's probably best. But people did say to me that there was really good stuff hidden away in these albums, because I That Be Here Now tour kind of really, it kind of did my head in a bit, and it just, it just wasn't fun anymore, and they had become sort of, rock stars.
Yeah.
But and I thought the idea was not to be rock stars, but
they'd become what they set out to destroy, right?
Yeah. You said that.
Yeah, I said that. You didn't say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, because when they started out, the mission statement was, to get rid of Phil Collins and
bring me the head of Phil Collins.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to put him in the fridge. That's great being a documentary. Yeah. What about that documentary when Liam's doing his baked beans, man?
No.
The baked beans. It's not the can. It's not the butter you bite off, man. It's not the shop you're in. It's the beans, man.
I know, but that's why we loved them though, because it was just, they would just come out with stupid stuff like that, and they would.
Man, I'll tell you what. I always thought Liam would make such a great music critic, because I used to read his stuff in the Enemy, and his comments about other bands were just either completely spot on or hilarious.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything in mind at the moment, but I remember I used to read him in the Enemy and just think, man, you should be a critic.
Yeah.
That band, man, what they need to do is do it. He's like, that's right, or whatever,
Well, now he's on Twitter, and he's the one person. The two people I log on Twitter to check is Liam and Tyson Fury, right? The boxer,
okay.
And they're both nutcases who will just come out with, he was having a go at, Noel. He just refers to him as potato, and he's just brilliant. Like just just this bizarre little things he says.
Yeah.
And he's the only person I know on Twitter that follows 0 people. Literally 0 following. You think, God bless him, man. More people in the world like Liam. But then, as I don't know, maybe if you got the brunt of it, as you said, if he didn't really feel comfortable around you as he knew you were a writer. But anyone that coming across people on here that have met him and would just hang around, kind of and tried to catch him and grabbed a beer with him, whatever. When there isn't cameras and when there is no microphones, apparently lovely guy, like loveliest guy you could meet, and just always happy to chat.
Yeah, no, he is. He's absolutely fine. He's got a good heart on him, Liam. And one of the things I was trying to do in both Getting High and Forever the People was to say this guy is not a dickhead.
Yeah.
The perception of him was this drunken dickhead, and I was trying to say he's actually, he's very sharp. Funny, really funny. I don't know if I put it in, but there was one bit I'm sure I did actually, but we were at Knowles, and it was getting near Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
It was like coming up the bonfire night, and Halloween was around the corner, and we were at Knowles, and me and Liam were talking, and we looked up, and on the TV screen was this documentary about the Ku Klux Klan. So there's all these images of guys with white hoods and burning crosses, and Liam goes, they're taking Halloween a bit seriously, aren't they?
Did he know the Ku Klux Klan though, or was it just a good line?
No, I don't know. That's the brilliant thing about it. Simon was he was a producer on the Supersonic doc. He said he went to Germany with Liam, and Liam said, one of the problems is, because asking about Noel, and he said one of the problems is people who are small. And then he looked at the crowd and went, "Not your little fella."
Oh God!
He's funny, and he's got a good heart on him.
There's a great.
But, they also got into that. What disappointed me on that Be Here Now tour was that they got into this Manc thing.
Right.
But I always thought it was all about because they were so so I became the Cockney.
Yeah.
I'm not even from London. Yeah, Cockney. I don't like Cockney. Blah blah. And it's like I thought the whole thing was to escape where you're from, liberation, freedom. Do you know what I mean? Freedom to be who you want to be, where you want to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just become very cynical and. Like I say, a machine,
Yeah.
So that's why I don't.
That's why you're not going to write the book.
No, because also, if I'd been there.
Yeah.
If I'd been there doing what I did on those first 2 books, reporting like that, then you could do it because it would. even if they were making duff albums, I'm sure they'd still be funny as. But I'd sort of, I'd bailed out by then. So
yeah. I mean, do you still keep in touch with Noel or any of the other guys now?
No. I saw him about a year ago at a mutual friend's party, and he was absolutely fine, and we talked, and absolutely fine. But he's moved on, so have I.
Yeah, no, fair play. Good. All right. Well, the book's still up for being done by someone else. Then there we go.
Sorry about that.
The one thing I want from them is more of a musicologist, like the Revolution in the Head, Ian MacDonald's book on the Beatles. Because while the out there was definitely a dip in the the relevance and in the songwriting, but still there's still really good stuff to explore in those. And actually into the later albums, they are very, very well produced, especially the last album, Dig Out Your Soul. It's a phenomenal piece of production. It's just that the underlying songs just aren't, and as I say, it's not the same.
What's the best song on that Dig Out Your Soul album?
Dig Out Your Soul, I would say about the first 4 songs are great. So there's one called The Turning, there's one called Bag It Up. Liam does a very good song actually that he wrote himself called I'm Out of Time. So Skip, if you're listening. The key for me is Noel writing the song and his brother Liam singing it, right? That was the magic. And then in the later albums, Liam starts writing, Gem's writing, Andy Bell's writing, and Noel's singing his own songs. So Noel will be singing 3 or 4 songs. So you end up on that Dig Out Your Soul, there's like maybe 3 or 4 songs that Noel wrote and Liam sings, and you're like, no, that's just not. That's not what we want, it's just so that's why if you make a playlist of literally just the songs that Noel wrote and Liam sang, it's great, and then similarly, there's certain songs earlier in their career that Liam does backing vocals on. And he sounds great. Liam as a backing vocalist is just the most phenomenal sound to come in the background, like when Lennon's doing backing vocals with on a McCartney tune, but he just doesn't do them anymore. And it's in those later years he wasn't even in the studio. He would just come in, do his vocals and go, and that's it.
That's what it did become like that. That's what I mean, a machine, So just a machine,
But there you go. Anyway, so that's Oasis. But I'll ping you over that. I'll ping you over that playlist, mate. But it is, there's stuff to enjoy in the later years, absolutely. The other thing I was going to touch on, because I've got sitting in front of me 2 tomes that I kind of have relied on a lot in my life, which is the Soul Stylists, and then the Sharper Word, a mod anthology.
Okay.
And the reason why is that I haven't mentioned this on the podcast, and people always have a go at me because I apparently talk about it too much. But I actually was on Mastermind in 2008, and my specialist subject was the mod movement in Britain.
No, you're joking.
I promise, mate. I'll send you my mod round is on YouTube, so I'll ping you the link of me doing answering questions on the mod. How many points you get? I got like 16 out of 17.
And your chosen subject?
The mod movement in Britain.
The mods in 2 minutes, starting now. Which of the 2 makes of motor scooter favoured by the mods has a name meaning wasp in Italian?
Vespa.
Correct. Which Friday night television pop music show whose slogan was "The Weekend Starts Here" was a showcase for the latest music and fashion?
Ready, steady, go.
Yes, at Easter 1964, which East Coast resort became the scene of the first confrontation between the police and mods and rockers,
Clacton.
when 97 arrests were made?
Clacton.
Yes, I'm the Face was on the A-side of the only single released by The Who in their incarnation as The High Numbers. What was on the B-side?
Zoot Suit.
Yes, in March 64, which celebrated mod band played on the last night of the Marquee Club's old Oxford Street premises, and the opening night of its new Wardour Street premises?
The Who?
The Yardbirds. Which character in Quadrophenia is said to have been based on Irish Jack, a mod and friend of Pete Townsend?
Jimmy.
Yes, in 2003, the Ministry of Defence became involved in a dispute with a clothing company over the use of which symbol that had been the mod's trademark since the 60s?
The RAF roundel.
Yes, which Birmingham-based mod revivalist topped the album charts in 97 with Marchin' Already?
Ocean Colour Scene.
Yes. What was the name of the Glaswegian who came to London when he was 18, is widely credited with turning Carnaby Street into the fashion centre it became?
John Stevens.
Yes. What's the title of the 1959 novel by Colin McGuinness, which was turned into a musical film released in 86, that captures the mod scene at its birth?
Absolute Beginners.
Yes. What was the name of the club that opened in Brasenose Street, Manchester in 63? It was a popular mods venue.
The Twisted Wheel.
Yes. The term Northern Soul is said to have been coined by which writer and champion of black music in articles that he wrote for the magazine Blues and Soul in 1970? 1970?
Dave Godin.
Yes. Which company produced the original Desert Boots, a lightweight boot with an upper made of suede that were favoured by mods?
Clark's.
Yes. What was the name of the music publicist who briefly managed The Who in their early days and described mod culture as clean living under difficult circumstances?
Pete Meaden.
Yes. Which magazine interviewed Mark Beld, later known as Mark Bolan, for an article published in '62 that was one of the first public recognitions of the mod scene?
Town.
Yes. Which mod group formed in Useley in the early 1960s and was the guitarist Ronnie Wood's first band?
The Birds.
Yes, Thunderbirds. In which town was the casino club that during the '70s was one of the centres of Northern Soul?
Wigan.
Wigan is correct. No passes, James Corcoran, 16 points.
I went to the second round and I did Billy Bragg in the second round, and I got I did okay on Billy Bragg, but you come across proper quizzes at that point.
What was the hardest question for the mod thing?
The mod questions were pretty easy. The only one I got wrong was what was the last band to play the Marquee before it closed? And I think I'd said The Who, and it was the Yardbirds or something like that. But basically, all they do for Mastermind is that you tell them the subject when you apply online, and they phone you, and then you have a chat through, and then they tell you, basically, if you pick the subject, you tell them the 3 or 4 books you're going to use. And so basically, because otherwise, what they don't want to do is completely throw you with stuff you haven't got a prayer of knowing. So basically, I picked out mods by Terry Barnes and a couple of your books and mod Richard Barnes, and then mod a Very British Phenomenon, and that was my books, and so I had to just memorize them because they could pick a question from any of those books at any point.
Right.
But what I did was basically read them all with flashcards, and then as I came up saying, oh, that's interesting, make a note of it in the form of a question. And that's how I kind of did it and how I sort of revised.
Yeah, good thing,
and I crushed it. I did, as I say, 16 out of 17. But it was pretty easy. But it was easy. I mean, any.
Well, I was watching it one time, and the specialist subject was Tottenham Hotspur, this girl.
All right.
And I think I got 14 out of 17.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If you just need to, because you nominate the books, as you just gen up on it, and as long as they're not going to throw you any complete curveballs. But anyway, so there we go. So I absolutely hammered those books kind of in that period. But I mean, I've always found it. I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as a mod. I mean, I don't spend the money to go out and look like a mod. But I'm just more of a historian of that scene. I've always loved it. I've always just find it.
Do you know what? I mean, that's where I was coming from with it, because what happened with me, because I was in the children's home, when the Suedehead thing hit Woking in '72, I couldn't buy all the clothes.
Yeah.
Right? Because suddenly all my mates, we were 12, 13, suddenly they were young men. With their Ben Shermans and their stay pressed trousers and their brogues and loafers and Cromwell. They just look like young men. It's just like, wow, that's such an impact on me. But I didn't have the money. I got, I think, 2 shillings a week pocket money. There's no way I could, buy these clothes. So because of that, when I finally started earning money at Melody Maker, I started buying those clothes then. And then I started looking into the history of it, like through Richard Barnes, and then thinking, there's this whole kind of accepted thing about music, which goes, Elvis, the Beatles, the Stones, Dylan, blah, 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 which is obviously, it's rock culture, and obviously that's a very important thing. But there's another story, which is jazz, Ollie Scott's, the Singing Club, Pete Meaden, Small Faces, Otis Redding, Skinheads, Soul Boys, the whole thing. So that's where although I say that the idea of Soul Stylist, as well as idea, that was his title. He explained the concept to me one day. I said, what we should do, but that's how that came about. But the strength of the Soul Stylist really isn't really about me. It's about the people I spoke to.
Yeah.
Because it's their testimonies. I mean, they're just fantastic. I wish I'd got more. I mean, I was very, very chuffed because Eddie Crosdale, who's huge on the Northern Soul scene, said to me, your chapter on Northern Soul is one of the best I've ever read, and I feel really proud about that because those guys are very hard to please.
Well, tell me about it, mate. After I did mod on Mastermind, I turned up with, I probably spent more time picking what I was going to wear than I did revising on it, because I thought the mods are going to tear me to shreds, and this is 2008, so it's, internet's around, and the mod culture forum is pretty big.
Yeah.
And and so I turned up with a couple of different sort of t-shirt choices and shirt choices, but they all had logos on them. And basically I didn't even realise, but the BBC was like, oh no, you can't have that Duff of St George. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then you can't have that. And so they said, well, I said, that's all I've got. He said, all right, well, you have to go and get something from wardrobe. So I ended up just picking like a random sort of ill-fitting brown shirt that was probably, because it was filmed in Granada Studios in Manchester, probably something that, someone off Coronation Street wears, and then, and so I've kind of, it's quite smart trousers and shoes. I'm wearing this crappy brown shirt, and then all this. So I'm like searching for myself and seeing what people have thought about it online, and it's all these mods going, yeah, he did alright on the questions, but fucking hell, what was he wearing? Like, help me out, guys, come on. But no. Anyway, that was fun. But I'll ping you the link over. But that was a real good laugh, and it was good fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what? So I mean, you've so what are you up to next? What's the next things we should be looking out for from?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I've done this book called On the Dawn of Your First Smile, and it's like an open letter to my son. I've had a boy called Rafi. It's had a huge impact on me, and the book is kind of not comparing, but kind of talking about my past as opposed to whatever, the past I'm going to try and build him. Do you know what I mean? And it was inspired by Oscar Wilde, actually. And Oscar wrote an amazing piece of work called De Profundis. Right. It was a letter he wrote to his boyfriend from prison in 1872, I think. No, 1892. And and that I'd always loved that piece of writing, so I kind of that kind of inspired that. And then the second one is a Ronnie Lane biog, which was crowdfunded, and I've done with John Hellier, who I did Steve Marriott book with.
Yeah.
And yes, that's going to come out. That's been pledged. That's been funded. Crowdfunded. So those guys who pledged for it, guys and girls, will get it on. When will they get it? In July, August, and then hopefully a paperback edition will come out in September.
Great. So you did Steve. You're doing Ronnie now. Are you going to go on and do Kenny and Mac?
No, that's it now. We've yeah. I mean, the thing was, I've done it as an oral history.
Yeah.
So it's quotes, and because I can't write any more about the small faces. There's nothing more to be said about.
Is there anything left?
What I mean?
I know.
Yeah, there's nothing left to say. It's all done and dusted. So, So
fair enough. And then what about? I mean, I really enjoyed Heaven's Promise as well. Your novel that you wrote, and I thought it was because it just. I mean, it was that sort of scene was. I'm a bit younger for not having been in that scene, but I really feel that your writing kind of style had this sort of snap to it that just kind of summed up that feeling of that what was happening in London around that time, and I really liked it. I mean, any other plans for more creative any like novels?
No, not at the moment, because it's to be honest with you, it's very hard to get books off the ground these days. Really difficult. So what I'm kind of I'd probably look more towards I'm trying to get into, to be honest with you, trying to get into film and TV scripts, that kind of thing.
Oh, great.
Because it's just, there's money there, and there's not a lot in books at the moment. So, I mean, but do you know what, James? Who knows? Who knows, mate? No, I mean, if 3 years ago you said to me, you will be looking after a 20-month-old son called Rafi and boring people stupid because you think he's going to play for Tottenham Hotspur and writing a 20,000-word book about him, I'd have gone, you want to stop taking those drugs, mate? You know what I mean? So who knows where we're going to be in 3 years' time,
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. All right, mate. Well, that's absolutely brilliant. So I will play out with the song of your choice. So, any song in particular, whether it's an Oasis or a Faces
Well, we've
track?
got to go with an Oasis one, haven't we? And for me, their best shot, easily, by miles, The Master Plan.
The Master Plan. Good.
Yeah.
Well, Paolo, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. I do really, really appreciate it.
No worries.
And it'd be good to stay in touch because this is kind of this podcast. I've been going for a sort of couple of months now, but it's already kind of picking up quite a bit of steam. We're going to start doing live stuff, and Brian Cannon's sort of been involved already, and yeah, it's exciting.
I will send him my best when you see him.
I will, mate. But good, Paolo. All the best, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
You as well, mate. Take care of yourself.
Cheers. Bye.